Good morning, everyone. So we are the group 6. We discuss about Goodwill and Categorical Imperative by Emmanuel Kant. Emmanuel Kant, he born April 22, 1724. He died February 12, 1804. He is German philosopher. He was one of the most important philosophers of modern era. He believed that the intention behind an action were more important than the consequences. His critical project revolutionized philosophy and has remained a touchstone, positive and negative, for philosophers up to the present. And it's not widely recognized, but Kant was the first person to use the term race and the way which we use it today. He cannot predict the consequences, so we cannot judge a person good and bad based on the consequences of their actions. So Kant's formula for ethics, Kant argued that rational duty was behind ethics and morals. So every other characteristics like being cheerful, kind, loving, helpful, etc. could all be used for evil intention except for goodwill. So in other words, is the motive behind an action is very important. He believed that only truly good thing is goodwill. So in other words, a moral decision is not based on a feeling of what is right, on the reward that might be given for doing right based on duty. So for example, the motive is if you stop to help someone who has been knocked down by a car in the street, and by helping them you accidentally killed them, your action will still be considered a moral out, but because you try to help because you feel it was your duty to do so. Moral action according to Kant. So Kant, actions done out of goodwill, an act of goodwill is done out of duty. A morally good act is not done for any other reason. The part of goodwill, may I call Grisel for discuss.
Thank you, Ate Vanessa. By the way, good morning, everyone. My name is Giselle Memblero, the assigned reporter for this. Goodwill. What is goodwill? Desire the good or achieve good. Only good thing without qualification. Goodwill is good without exception. Good at goodness for a sense of happiness. Goodness and wills of wanting to do good. Way we are made. Intellect leads us to the goodwill. Sa paggawa ng mabuti, lahat ay kwalipikado. Ang pagtulong ng bukal sa kalooban na walang hinihintay na kapalit. Ginagawa mo ito dahil masaya ka at nais mo talagang gumawa ng mabuti. What does Kant mean by a goodwill? First, to act out of a goodwill for Kant means to act out of a sense of moral obligation or duty. Second, to act morally, one does do it for the sake of its desirable consequences, but rather because one understands that it morally the right thing to do. Hindi inuobliga ang tao na gumawa ng mabuti, bagkus ito ay kagustuhan ng walang hinihinging kapalit kasi ang paggawa ng mabuti ay ang tamang gawin. Nothing in the world indeed, nothing even beyond the world can possibly conceive which could be good without qualification except a goodwill, by Emmanuel Kant. Yun nga po ang paggawa ng mabuti ay bukal sa loob o pure intention kumbaga.
Thank you, Grisel, for discuss about that. And next reporter is Mary Rose.
Good morning, everyone. I am Mary Rose, the discussant of the Goodwill. So, the Goodwill, it is impossible to conceive of anything in the world or even out of it that can be considered good without qualification, except a goodwill. Kant assessed the moral character or of actions by focusing on the internal, particularly the rational aspect of human conduct. And Kant claims that the only thing inherently good is goodwill. He is talking about will that follows reasons, guidance, acts, from a sense of duty. So, ang gustong sabihin dito ni Kant is that yung goodwill is the goodwill is good not because what it costs or accomplishes, not because of its useful in the attainment of some set purposes, but because it is good in itself. So, ang halimbawa ng goodwill na sinasabi natin dito is halimbawa yung pagtulong sa mahirap, halimbawa is may nakita kang isang matanda sa tabi ng kalsada. At ang nasa isip mo agad is tutulong. Yung goodwill doon is hindi yung pagtulong mo sa matanda or yung maa-attain ng matanda na tulong mula sa'yo, but because yung goodwill is gusto mong tumulong dahil tutulong ka. Hindi siya forced, hindi siya duty, tutulong ka dahil gusto mong tumulong. Next slide, please. And Goodwill chooses what does it is simply and purely because it is the right to do, not because it is inclined to do some deed, nor because a deed has some positive consequences. So, ayan, kagaya nga ng sinabi ko kanina, tutulong ka hindi dahil tama yung pagtulong, tutulong ka dahil gusto mong tumulong, dahil yun yung will mo. And actions have true moral worth only when they spring from a recognition of duty and a choice to discharge it. To get moral credit, we must do an act because it is right. So, yun na nga, that we need to act morally because it is our duty. Na minsan na natural na sa ating tao na yung tutulong ka sa nangangailangan na hindi ka naghihintay ng kapalit or something in return, na minsan tutulong ka na may mga tao kasi na ayaw tumulong kasi iniisip nila na aasahan ka na lang nila na yung tulong mo aasahan na lang nila, instead na tumulong sila, nagkakaroon sila ng alinlangan na tumulong, na iabot yung tulong na kaya nilang gawin. So yung goodwill na sinasabi dito ni Kant is kahit ano pa yung, wala siyang pakialam kung yung aabusuhin mo yung tulong niya, wala siyang pakialam kung anong sasabihin ng ibang tao, dahil tutulong siya dahil gusto niya, dahil yun yung kagandahang loob na meron siya. Hindi niya iniisip yung consequent or yung reward na matatanggap niya. Walang ganun. And next slide please po. Sa Kant's ethics of the goodwill, intelligence, wit, courage, wealth, and health are qualified goods in estimation. We value them only to the extent that they contribute to the other things that we value. So, minsan tayong mga tao, dati, parang bilib na bilib tayo sa mga taong matatalino, matatapang, mayayaman. Pero, minsan, sa buhay natin ngayon, marirealize mo na lang na iba pa rin yung taong yung marunong makisama, yung taong makatao ba, na iniisip yung kabutihan ng mga tao, yung merong kababaang loob. Kasi may mga tao na matalino pero hindi marunong makisalamuha or hindi sila marunong makipagkapwa-tao. Like for example ng mga taong matatalino, sila minsan yung, halimbawa na lang is, sila minsan yung nagkukos ng trouble na yung ida-down ka. Minsan dahil matatalino sila, hindi mo sila pwedeng turuan. Kumbaga, unreachable sila, unteachable sila dahil magaling ako, may profession ako, hindi tayo magka-level, yung mga ganung bagay ba. And sabi pa dito, all of these qualities can be put to bad use of intelligence, wit, and courage can be used to rob and murder. Yun nga, minsan, yung talino ng tao, yun yung dahilan minsan kung bakit sila nagiging monster. I'm sorry sa term, pero yun talaga, kumbaga nagiging gahaman sila. Yung talino nila is ginagamit nila sa maling pamamaraan. Kaya, yun yung kaibahan ng goodwill sa iba pang mga bagay na kagaya ng intelligence, ng courage, dahil minsan nagagamit yun sa maling pamamaraan. Kumbaga, andun kasi yung nagkakaroon sila ng interest. Yung motives nila is nagiging iba na. Kumbaga, masama na yung motive nila, yung gusto nilang kumbaga mali na yung naiisip nila na sa maling pamamaraan na sila nagiging matalino. Pleasure. Yeah, dahil sa pleasure, the absence of pain and happiness are good only with qualification and only if they deserve. With the exemption of a goodwill, nothing or out of this world, good without qualification. Kant says goodwill shines like a jewel for its own sake. So yun na nga, na yung sinasabi ni Kant dito, yung kabutihang loob, minsan na-judge natin yung isang tao sa way ng pananamit, sa itsura, pero kapag yung taong yun nagawan ka ng kabutihang loob, halimbawa, may nasiraan ka ng sasakyan, and may taong parang gusgusin, pero andun yung willingness nila na tumulong, na iabot yung tulong sa'yo dahil nakikita nila na kailangan mo ng tulong. Minsan tayo mga tao, ginajudge natin yung mga tao sa paligid natin without knowing na sila pala yung meron pang kababaang loob, sila pa pala yung merong mga kabutihang loob na kayang mag-extend ng tulong na walang hinihintay na kapalit. Masaya sila na makakatulong sila sa'yo without expecting any rewards. Dahil yung mga tao ngayon, kapag tumulong, minsan yung iba pinupost pa sa social media para lang ma-recognize sila na, tinulungan ko si ganito, tinulungan ko si ganyan. Yung goodwill na sinasabi dito ni Kant, yun yung pagtulong na may bukal sa kalooban, pagtulong na tutulong siya dahil yun yung gusto niya, na wala siyang, hindi niya ginagawa para sa sarili niyang kapakanan, kumbaga tumutulong siya para makatulong siya, ipaabot yung tulong niya. And next slide po. In this respect, Kant's view towards morality parallels the Christian's view concerning obedience to God's commandments, according to which the Christian obeys God's commandments simply because God commands them, not for sake of rewards in heaven, death, or from fear of punishment in hell. So, yun nga yung sinasabi ni Kant dito, parang katulad siya nung sa mga paniniwala ng mga Christians na pagsunod sa Diyos, na sumusunod ang mga tao sa Diyos hindi dahil para magkaroon sila ng kaligtasan or maligtas sila sa punishment, but because sumusunod sila kay God dahil mahal nila si God, and dahil talagang masunurin sila, hindi sila sumusunod dahil sa mga rewards na and mga promises ni God, but simply because sumusunod sila dahil talagang gusto nilang sumunod. And next slide, please po. And in a similar way, for Kant, the rational being does what is morally right because he recognizes himself as having a moral duty to do so rather than anything he or she may get out of it. Acting good will lead us to our moral duty purely because it is our moral duty. So yung duty natin is yung magkaroon tayo ng motivation and morally dahil yun yung kailangan nating gawin, tamang gawin. Yun yung mga dapat nating gawin na hindi na tayo kailangan ng i-force, na meron tayong mga ine-expect. Yung goodwill will lead us to our moral duty purely. Kumaga, yun pa yung yun yung nagpapakita, yung goodwill is yung nagpapakita sa atin ng pure intention natin sa mga ginagawa natin, sa mga bagay na ginagawa natin na talagang wala yung intention natin is just to do good. At dahil yun ay mabuti, wala tayong ibang ine-expect. That duty implies that we are under some kind of obligation, a moral law. At sinabi pa ni Kant dito na we are aware of this obligation as it comes to us in the form of imperative. Not all imperatives or commands are connected with morality, for they are not in every case directed to all people that they are lack of quality and universality that a moral rule requires. So, hindi lahat ng pinapakitang kabutihan is mabuti. Kasi may mga tao na papakitaan ka ng mabuti, pero meron silang ibang intensyon, meron silang mga ibang hangarin. Yun yung kaibahan na ni goodwill. Kasi si goodwill, talagang pure intention siya, walang halong pagpapanggap, walang kahit anong intention na magkukas ng harm sa mga tao sa paligid mo. And next slide po. Yan. So I have example here of goodwill. Let's consider some examples. A shoekeeper who gives the right change to his customer because it is good for returning business is acting in a morally wrong way because he is not acting out of duty. Giving customers the right change because that is the right thing to do. Then his action would be morally acceptable according to Kant. So dun pa lang sa simpleng pagbibigay ng tamang sukli, parang ganun din yung goodwill na kailangan mong ibigay yung tamang sukli kasi yun yung morally acceptable according kay Kant, na yun yung tamang gawin sa halimbawa sa business, yun yung tama nating gawin, yung pagbibigay. Kung nagbayad siya ng tama, suklian mo siya ng tama. And doon na po nagtatapos ang aking report. May I call on the next reporter po, Ate Vanessa?
Thank you, Mary Rose, and let's have to discuss about goodwill. So now we proceed to categorical imperative. So what is categorical imperative? An action that is good itself and conform to reason and act as universal rules governing a situation regardless of circumstance. So categorical means applicable in all situations as absolute. Imperative means something that must be done, an obligation. So in other words, moral decision that you make must be made because you think it would be good for everyone to do, or the something that an absolute is right. Example of absolute rights are protect your children, care for the elderly, and consider others. So why I discuss in this situation? Because can write that right and wrong based on reason or situation. Deo.
So, the categorical imperative is the supreme principle of morality. It is an act for the sake of the duty only. So, it means it is only the way that an action can have moral worth. And it is a doing or job that one should perform without expecting any in return. So, dito, pinapakita na kailangan mong gumawa hindi dahil sa may nag-utos or meron kang sinusunod, kundi kailangan mong gumawa kasi kailangan mong i-perform yung act na nasa kung ano yung nasa situation. Next slide. And according to Kant, categorical imperative is the only good way to act. So, ibig sabihin, you should act in the same way that you would like everyone else to act in the same way as you do. And it is an act in accordance with the thing like all the people to follow, and it was all an universal law. So it would be one which represented by action with necessary objective in itself without any reference to any other purposes. And categorical imperative is supposed to provide a way to evaluate every moral actions and a person's making a moral judgment. So it is not a command to you that you need to follow. Wala siyang basis, wala siyang pinagkukuhaan ng any kind of na sinusunod, or like example yung 10 commandments, hindi sa pagsunod ng 10 commandments, kundi ito yung natural way of actions na kailangan mong i-perform. Ito yung empty or neutral procedure to evaluate any actions which might be a moral relevant, and as a whole, yung categorical imperative is to be done to help and do the right things you should do. And next po, ate. Sir.
Thank you, Deo. So an example of categorical imperative is example, if it's right to always tell the truth and always protect your friend. So dito yung magde-decide ka kung tama magsasabi ka ba ng totoo or hindi. So what do you think if a murderer asks you to tell them where your friend is so they can murder them? So the asked question is, do you tell the truth and lead the murder to your friend, or do you tell a lie and protect friend's life? So sa part na to is hard situation if nandito ka sa situation na to, kung sasabihin mo ba sa murder kung nasa ng kaibigan mo, kasi once na hindi mo na-convince yung murder na mali yung sinasabi mo, maaaring ikaw yung mapahamak. So sometimes pwede ka magsabi ng hindi katotohanan, pero depende kung anong reason to. So there are three forms of the categorical imperative. So what are those? So first one is the universal law. Second, treat human as end in themselves. Third is act as if you live in a kingdom. So first one is the universal law. Act only according to that maxim by which you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. So act only on that maximum through which you can at the same time will that it should a universal law. So this ensures that moral judgment are impartial and objective, and so avoid the dangers of appealing to self-interest. This maintains that the moral law be applied universally to admin of exception to the rule will be inconsistent and therefore illogical. Next one is treat human as end in themselves. So people should be treated with respect and dignity as all human beings are rational, being and therefore are worthy at the respect of the moral law. So can deliberate assert a moral law that upholds equality and does not treat people differently according to class, wealth, or race. Such an ethics of equality was forward-looking in the 18th century. Third, act as if you live in kingdom. So can regarded the moral community as a kingdom of people who should apply moral maxims in such a way that show respect for others based on their nationality and in line with reason. Moral maxims should be universal and application thus maintaining the justice of impartiality. So thank you. That's all the report of Group 6. Thank you everyone and thank you for listening and hope na may naintindihan po kayo. Salamat.